And now let's talk about the New York Giants. Uh, Daniel Jones is their quarterback. Received the popular name Danny Dimes. Came in last year as a rookie. You have Saquon Barkley at their running back. Golden Tate, Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton, and Evan Engram make up the receiving core. So I think around Daniel Jones is a great weapons, it's like some great weapons that he can really take advantage of. He threw some dimes to Golden Tate last year. My favorite one is Golden Tate against the Patriots. Stay tuned to our videos coming up. We have figured out how to do some highlights, so we'll be able to show you guys some cool stuff in the future. But yeah, Golden Tate, I think phenomenal talent. Sterling Shepard has some great stuff, and then Darius Slayton coming into his rookie year. If you go check out our wide receiver podcast, Josh put him as his sleeper pick. So I mean, not just you have to listen to Josh explain it because I can't even try to explain that one. But let's start with Daniel Jones, Norris. Quarterback last year, he came in, took Eli Manning's role. New York kind of surrounded him and said, "This is our guy. This is Danny Dimes. He's going to do it." And it's funny. The first game that he started was against Tampa Bay, and he put up 34 points in his first game as a rookie.
Mm-hmm.
And the next week he put up 12, then 10, then 5, then 10, then 28, then 11, then 30, and then a bye week, and then 14, and then 8, and then he got injured. And then he came back with 35 points,
right,
and then 14. So, yes, he finished the year as quarterback 24. But that's off of 13 games and these inconsistent fluctuations between giant level, right? The New York Giant level of playing, and then these I wouldn't even draft him level. Why did he put up 4 points? Why? And so, yeah, Danny Dimes, he's made his way in. I like him this year as a late round pick. I would pick him up over some others. Maybe we could do a little would you rather, Norris, if you want to throw out some quarterback names that you would take over Danny Dimes, and maybe I wouldn't.
Okay, let's see. Okay, Danny Dimes or Ryan Tannehill?
Yeesh, I'm going Ryan Tannehill.
Okay, all right. Danny Dimes or Tom Brady this year?
Oof. So that's close. That's very close for me. So I think Tom Brady could have a phenomenal year, but I'm going Danny Dimes. I think dual threat with Daniel Jones. The reason I took Ryan Tannehill is because like the weapons, there's like he's gonna get ahead of games and in this coast, so he's not gonna throw a lot of interceptions. That's where Danny Dimes can go wrong. But I think with Daniel Jones, he can run. Like he runs it. He ran 2 touchdowns in his first game. And that was it all last year. He only ran 2 touchdowns in one game, and that was it. But he takes those. He has legs on him. I think the Giants can use that to their advantage this year. I don't know. Maybe it's optimism. Maybe it's just. But I'm going to go with Daniel Jones over Tom Brady this year in my drafts.
One more. I'll just go for. Let's see here. I had him in my head. No, I don't have him. I can't remember who I was going to say. It was a good one too, but I can't remember.
All right. So basically, what I'm trying to get at is.
Got it.
Okay. Go for it.
And maybe it's a good one, maybe it's not, but depends on who you ask. All right. Daniel Jones or Jimmy Garoppolo?
Oh, that is a good one. That's a good one. Oh man, a lot of people are gonna hate me. Jimmy G brought them to the Super Bowl, right? But I'm going Daniel Jones.
Okay.
I'm going Daniel Jones because. So here's why, right? And it may just be my eyes and not a whole lot of people, but last year, Jimmy G was not a quarterback I wanted to keep on my team. Like he hands the ball off more than he even he looks at it. Like, he just closes his eyes sometimes and hands it off. Like, he doesn't need to throw the ball as much. But he threw for 13 interceptions last year in 16 games, right? Now, like I said, Daniel Jones has the chance of throwing a lot of interceptions, but I have a little bit more faith in Daniel Jones this year. And Daniel Jones did what he did without having his whole team around him, you know? There was Golden Tate was hurt, Sterling Shepard was hurt, or his lineman got hurt, Saquon Barkley got hurt. Like, there were so many injuries last year that Daniel Jones is now coming in for the first time, having all of his weapons healthy and ready to go, and I think he can take full advantage of that. But, I mean, Daniel Jones only threw for 12 in those 13 games. Maybe he would have thrown more interceptions if he played more games. Maybe not. That's a what-if kind of statement. But, I mean, that's just – I'm going to go with Daniel Jones this year.
Okay.
Might be a lot of hate, but I'm going Daniel Jones. Fantasy-wise.
All right.
But basically what I'm trying to get at is I think Daniel Jones has an opportunity to capitalize on this year of growth and this offseason, and I think we could definitely see that. What about you? What are your thoughts on Daniel Jones this year, Norris?
Yeah, I think he's a good quarterback. I will acknowledge that they really like to throw the ball over there in Giant Stadium. He has every game after that he played in, and after week 3 against Tampa Bay, he had over 30 attempts per game. Matter of fact, we'll get technical, 31. He never went lower than 31 attempts. I guess my only thing is that, yes, he is a rookie. It was his first year. In a 4-game span, he put up 7 interceptions, which is not beautiful, but he seemed to tighten the reins, a little bit in the second half of the season, only throwing 5 after week 8. So that's encouraging. And he threw 2 games where he had 4 touchdowns, and then 3 or 4 weeks later, he had 5 touchdown performance with 0 picks, 352 yards, all against Washington, who we covered earlier. So I just think that with the situation that he's in, they obviously love throwing the ball. He has some up-and-coming weapons around him at the wide receiver position. So, yeah, I think he's a solid choice. I mean, his fantasy points per game were they were inconsistent, and they can make you question and think twice about whether or not you're going to start him the following week. So I think he's a safe player for you to have on your bench, as backup. I'm not sure if this is the year that you're going to play him every single week. Wait to see his first few games, and if you see that he's on a roll, then by all means play the hot person. But he's definitely not going to be a starter in my roster or who I aim to look for in a quarterback.
Yeah, and just to let you guys know, he did average. He started a total of 12 games, and he scored a final of 214.9. So we'll just round up, say 215 points in a PPR league, which leaves him with about 15-point average.
16,
I'm sorry, 16. Yeah. So I mean, it's not horrible yet. Not the best.
Yeah, and when we put it in that type of, I guess when we present it that way, it's cool. But in the reality, in those games where you need your quarterback to show up and he puts up 10 points, when at the end of the year, if he still averages out 16 or 17 points, it's like, big picture, that sounds great. But when I really need him to show up, I can't trust him.
Yeah, and I think we'll be able to tell that this year. I mean, he threw for 3,000 yards last year, and this was a rookie year. So I think we can definitely, if we see some growth, I could put a little bit more trust into him, making that sophomore leap. But like you said, you want that trust, you want that reliability in your quarterback. You want a quarterback that's going to put up 20 points a game. That's who you want. You want a reliable quarterback, and we'll be able to tell. What you mentioned earlier is phenomenal. Daniel Jones didn't have a game where he threw for under 31 yards if he started, or 31 attempts. I mean, so the volume is there. He's going to throw the ball. He's going to throw the ball, and that's what you want from your quarterback. People like Jared Goff, who may not be super accurate, but he's going to throw the ball 30, 40, 50, 60 times. That's what you want to
Literally.
see. Literally, yeah. So yeah, and I'm just gonna put Daniel Jones in my top 15 this year. That's where I think he could fall and he could stay. But let's move on to Saquon Barkley. Extreme talent, like we mentioned earlier, probably going second overall in drafts, maybe even second overall in your rankings. Saquon Barkley, phenomenal talent. He has the ability in the opportunity in the Giants to be that number one option, and he takes advantage of whenever he has the ball. He did get injured last year, which is something to note for his stats. If he's healthy and he stays healthy, he's going to produce. But I think that his injury isn't really something I'm super worried about. Like he's got an improved offensive line. They drafted Andrew Thomas, so I think that can help him run. But overall, he came back from his injury and did phenomenal anyways. So that's why a big reason why I'm not worried about the injury from last year. And he doesn't have that injury-prone status. I mean, just some games to rattle off after his injury. Some points. He had 17, 28, 15, 8, 8, 14, 9, 30, 43, 20 to finish out the year. So I think I could definitely put some stock in having my faith in Saquon Barkley. Now his touchdowns were kind of low comparatively. Overall, he only had six rushing touchdowns and 2 receiving touchdowns. I could see that going up this year. Definitely time for like progression and making those different steps with Daniel Jones taking that helm and staying there in the quarterback rather than switching between Eli and Daniel Jones. But if you want to see some more detail about Saquon Barkley, check out our running back video or running back podcast, whichever one that you prefer. But what about you, Norris? What are some of your thoughts on Saquon this year?
Yeah, Saquon is in the same realm of conversation as Ezekiel Elliott. Coming off of a year, like we mentioned, he didn't play for 3 games. To look at last year, we just need to see that and leave it in the past. Just blink, let it go, because we can go into the year with confidence that, okay, not only did he perform at a high level in his rookie year, and in his second year he showed up in the 13 games that he played, but going into the season, we know what we do know for a fact is that offense runs around him in the rushing game, and he has a good per game average when it comes to targeting in the receiving game. There was one game he had 10 targets, in that. So there's many games where we see him have 7, 8, 6 different targets within the game, which is encouraging because we know that he can run. We know, and after he got hurt, he was getting the carries. They didn't necessarily hold him back in a way that some people may have thought that they would. Still had games with 17 carries, 24 carries, and whatnot. So, after week 12, he had 2 100-yard rushing games, and he got 4 out of his 6 rushing touchdowns in the last 3 weeks of the season. So, if you are concerned, please do not hold on to that concern because we're talking about Saquon Barkley here. He's going to be definitely in the top 10, if he plays 16 games. But if he plays 13 games again this year, he'll finish in the top 10. And the ball is definitely going to be coming his way in both realms. So, yeah, that's the solid player that he is, where you don't really have to be concerned about how things look in the past.
Yeah, I think, like I said, he's a solid player, phenomenal talent, and he's a guy not to be too worried about when you have him on your team. And definitely somebody who has high draft value and high trade value. I've heard some wild trades to accumulate or to acquire Saquon Barkley. But let's talk about their wide receiving core. It's very interesting. If you look at this division, the similarities and differences in these teams. When you have Dallas with the 3 wide receivers, and then you have Uh, Philly with the good tight ends. I feel like the Giants have a good accumulation of both. Not so much of the extreme talent when you have the wide receivers like Amari Cooper and them, but with Sterling Shepard, Golden Tate, and Darius Slayton as their wide receivers, and then Evan Engram, you have that great tight end, top 10 tight end, and you have some guys that week in, week out might be able to crack that top 10 list and potentially even be number one. We've seen Darius Slayton really take off in some games, and we've seen Daniel Jones love to target him. And then there's other games that Sterling Shepard has led the team in targets or receiving yards. And so it's really like when it comes to Giants receivers, it's not really a clear number one or a clear number two or a clear number three, but they're definitely valuable nonetheless. Darius Slayton is a guy that I would love to highlight in this video, that he had 83 targets, 48 yards, and 740 receiving yards with 8 touchdowns. And I think that really goes to speak to his red zone progression, that in the red zone, Daniel Jones is trusting Darius Slayton. But another guy to, like, I think will be the number one wide receiver this year with his experience, with his time in. And they pretty much all three New York Giants wide receivers finished within the top 40 or within the 40 range of the PPR leagues. But he had Golden Tate had 85 targets, 49 receptions, 676 receiving yards, and 6 touchdowns only in 11 games. So I think if he played more, you would definitely see more from it. But that goes to say with every player, if only they weren't injured, you know. But with all that, I value Golden Tate as a really good sleeper pick. I would probably pick up Golden Tate over Darius Slayton, but we'll definitely have to see in the preseason who Daniel Jones is really targeting. And once it gets closer to the regular season, you can make those moves necessary to grab that Giants wide receiver if you really want them on your team.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Darius Slayton is going to have the edge over Sterling Shepard, but the expectation for Golden Tate is there because, you know, they obviously acquired him through a trade. So I think that with his experience, with his, you know, track record out there, you know, when he was in Detroit, I think that the expectation is higher for him from a lot of different people. But with Darius Slayton, the encouraging part is the fact that he had 8 touchdowns. And honestly, all 3 wide receivers were in the same range of targets as far as like the finish in targets. So, again, you have a quarterback that is young, and we are already seeing him spread the ball out in a fair way that's going to benefit. Some people look at it, you know, in a negative way because they're taking away from one specific receiver to really pass the threshold. But with that being said, even though he's spreading the ball out, you can at least expect Darius Slayton to be the guy to end up in the red zone. And Golden Tate obviously is great with his breakaway plays and making those long strides and whatnot, having 6 touchdowns as well. So it's just it's an interesting wide receiver situation out there, but that is what's going to make them competitive in this division because, like we mentioned earlier, Washington Redskins are going to be the least of anybody's concern. It's really between the Giants, the Cowboys, and the Eagles to try to fight in the way that we see the NFC South in their situation, you know, having those teams finish with similar records almost every year and make it into the playoffs. So it is a good, on paper, it's a good team to look at as far as wide receivers and running backs and whatnot. They have Deion Lewis in the back trying to help, and Wayne Gallman and whatnot. So it's a good support system all around on offense. That way Daniel Jones can be able to spread the ball out. But yeah, that's kind of my take on the wide receivers. And Evan Engram, we'll touch on him, but he's a key part to the success that the wide receivers have. Usually it's the other way around. Usually it's the wide receivers that influence the tight ends play, but I personally think it's the other way around with Evan Engram being the key piece in that offense that allows Sterling, Darius, and Golden to do what they do on the outside.
For sure. Because people are doubling Evan Engram. And that's
Right.
because they know Evan Engram is like the number one target. He's got the speed, he's got the body, and he can take a small play and make it big. And like I've talked about before, that's exactly what you want in a fantasy value. He has the targets going for him as well. With last year, now, granted, the one thing that's going against him is his injury proneness.
It's bad.
It's horrible, man. And to see a talent like Evan Engram continuously be injured and never play 16 full games is tough. It's tough to keep him on your team knowing that he's probably going to go down sometime in the year, even though you hate it. And we at Flash Fantasy do not root for injuries at all. But last year he did have 68 targets and 44 receptions, and he only played in 8 games. He's going right now in most drafts around the same position as Hunter Henry, Darren Waller even. I mean, there's a lot of stipulation of whether you should take him or Rob Gronkowski. I'd actually rather have Gronkowski than Evan Engram.
1,000%, 1,000%.
And so, yeah, I think overall it's a solid idea to have somebody like Evan Engram. But if he's not going to be on the field, then what's the point, you know? But I would definitely, if you're drafting Evan Engram, I would secure a late end tight end with high upside and keep him in on your bench. And if Evan Engram goes down this year, you have that. I mean, if it's one bench spot, you think about it, you could probably take up one bench spot with a tight end that you could potentially keep and use the next year if Evan Engram doesn't do what he does and this tight end takes off. Somebody like Dallas Goedert, who we talked about earlier, who has that high upside that isn't being drafted very high at all that you could probably take for free, or somebody like Blake Jarwin with the high upside. So, I mean, there's definitely guys out there that you can grab and put on your bench to help you with the tight end position.
You know, and also the offensive coordinator, Jason Garrett, is out there now. And in my view and my opinion, I did not like Jason Garrett as a head coach for the Dallas Cowboys. I just think that was not good for him. But the one thing that we saw out of him was his ability to, help the offense get rolling and whatnot. So I think this is going to be just a proving time for him to be able to show his expertise in that area, because that was usually people's critique, is that, he should be the offensive coordinator and not necessarily the head coach. And so I think that with him coming from the Dallas Cowboys, familiar with the Giants offense by facing them every single year for his whole career,
Right.
I think that that's going to be something to put them over the edge as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a solid breakdown. And Jason Garrett being there, I think he can use Daniel Jones. We've seen him take quarterbacks and use them to their full extent. He's played with guys like Zeke, so Sacrum Barkley is somebody that we could see being used. And I think one receiver that I would choose is Golden Tate, but it's really up for debate. We saw how Jason Garrett for years used Jason Witten. There's another parallel universe there for you guys. But now he has Evan Engram, a more receiving tight end who has the speed. Like we said, he just needs to be healthy. So, but yeah, definitely some guys on the Giants that you could draft. With Daniel Jones, you could probably get them late in draft. Sacrum Barkley, if he's not going in the first round, pick him up. And then Evan Engram. I'm going to go with like 9th round, Evan Engram. If you can get him there, that's a value. But
I'd wait later. I'd go 11 or 12.
Okay, so let's play this game. Evan Engram, Hunter Henry.
Hunter Henry.
Evan Engram, Rob Gronkowski.
Rob Gronkowski.
Evan Engram or Hayden Hurst.
Hayden Hurst.
Wow. So, okay. Evan Engram, Noah Fant.
Only because I really like Noah Fant and what he showed us last year.
Really? So you're taking
Noah
Noah
Fant.
Fant. Wow.
Yes.
Evan Ingram or Austin Hooper?
That's Cleveland, man. I'm gonna go with Evan Ingram
All
on
right,
that
all
one.
right. It's glad that you could put him over somebody at least, because you're dropping Evan Ingram outside the top 15. All right, last one. Evan Ingram or Jared Cook?
Hi. Uh, you know, Jerry Cook. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
because Evan Ingram, he's got to play.
Yeah. I
He's
wouldn't
got to
be
play.
I wouldn't be sorry because I mean, like I said, if you're gonna get Evan Ingram, you want to secure that tight end. But you can get
Hmm.
one of these tight ends late in drafts, and he's gonna stay healthy. Here's some guys that I would rather target than Evan Ingram late in drafts. Even though if I can have Evan Ingram, I'd want him, but I don't want to pay that price for him. So Mike Gesicki, I'd rather have him. David Njoku, rather have
Mm,
him.
that's a
But
risk, but okay.
it's a risk, but I'd rather him because of the chemistry he has with Baker.
Hmm.
I think we could see some production. T.J. Hawkinson, or as most people like to call him, T.J. Droppinson.
Right.
At least he has targets and he stays on the field. And I think if Matthew Stafford stays healthy, we could see some serious production out of T.J. Hawkinson this year. Hayden Hurst, like we spoke about, and last one, I'd rather have. Now this is a tough one for most people, but I'd rather have Greg Olson than Evan Ingram.
Okay. I can understand that. Yeah.
Because look at Jacob Hollister or Will Disley in Seattle. Now they have Greg Olson. It's a solid overall guy. But yeah, so that's a wrap for our NFC East breakdown. Thank you for listening. Uh, be sure to check out our podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening to our podcast, check us out on YouTube. You can follow us on Instagram at The Flash Fantasy, and you can check us out on Facebook at The Flash Fantasy. We also have Twitter at Flash Fantasy FB, and yeah, make sure to check us out. Follow, subscribe. We're also opening up a listener/follower league. Open on this Sunday, June 7th. We're going to be drafting at Sunday, 10:15 p.m. And we'll be going through, Norris and I, breaking down the draft as we do it and publishing that with our podcast on Monday. So be sure to find the invite. We'll put the link in the descriptions below and make your way over there. Thank you for listening.